Hello everybody, I'm Ezel Senpai, and welcome back to another episode of The History of Dual Paladins. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Liberators, Ezel, and decent general support. Just like in the last video, I'm not going to talk about every single card. I'm just going to be talking about unique cards, cards that were different, cards that have stood the test of time. With that said, I'm going to be talking about specific cards from the trial deck, Liberator of the Sanctuary, all the way to the end of Season 3, BT15, Infinite Rebirth. So let's cut to the chase and get right down to the trial deck. This trial deck introduced the concept of Break Ride and introduced the archetype Liberators. And to start things off, let's go back to the main grade 3 of this trial deck, Solitary Liberator Gancelot. Gancelot was still a really solid grade 3. He became an 11k base power, which was the second time in Dual Paladin history that we have a grade 3 with 11k. After this point, a majority of the main grade 3s become 11k. So what's Gancelot? Gancelot, he is our Break Ride unit for Liberators. Break Rides in general gave a generic 10k power to the Vanguard when another grade 3 rides on top of it at limit break, and applied an extra skill depending on the deck. Gancelot's skill was plus 10 to the Vanguard and plus 5 to 3 rear guards. So to play Liberators to its fullest potential, you had to call a lot very early on and set up for it if you wanted to do the Break Ride and give your rear guards extra power, which in itself wasn't a bad idea, but just the trial deck alone was not fast enough to even support that extra 5k boost to 3 rear guards. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the one and the only Blasterblade Liberator. Blasterblade Liberator was the oh my god card of this deck. It was the return of the Avatar. It was the return of the blaster. It was, back then it was so cool. It's like, oh, we've been without Blasterblade a whole season except for Blasterblade Spirit. But look, Blasterblade has a cape now. He's so cool looking. And I still agree. I still have my Blasterblade Liberators, although they're hardly used at all unless I'm trying to make a fun deck. But Blasterblade Liberator it is unique. It still is unique. Unlike Blaster Dark Revenger and Blaster Dark Revenger Abyss, Blaster Blade Liberator didn't get any extra support, unfortunately. It was only... Well, I mean, I can't say he didn't get any extra support. He did get a lot of support later in the future of this video. But when it came to the card and becoming another card, it didn't happen. So, Blasterblade Liberator had an on-ride/call skill on Vanguard and Rearguard. If he appeared anywhere and you had a Liberator Vanguard, you can counterblast 2 and kill something in the front row. He wasn't guard restricted, but he's circle restricted. So whatever was in the front row, Blasterblade could kill it with a simple counterblast of 2. Next, we'll move on to a pair of cards, actually. These cards, these were very infamous when it came to deck building within archetypes. They are the plus 3k attackers, and I'm talking about Fallon and Marin. Both of them have the same skill, copy-paste, of when this unit attacks, if you have a Liberator Vanguard, it gains 3,000 power until the end of that battle. So this was kind of cool because it meant, hey, if you're playing Liberators, you could kind of rush early at 1. Heck, you can even rush early at 2 if you have the field set up correctly. These cards were eventually weeded out for other cards later in the future of this Liberator stuff. Surely you can't judge an archetype just based off of the trial deck. So with Liberators, they needed a lot of support right from the trial deck. And it was weird because what they got in BT10, it kind of worked, but at the same time, it didn't. But let's go ahead and just jump right into it. We're going to talk about the main grade 3 from set 10. Liberator of the Round Table, Alfred. Alfred is the unique grade 3 for this set. He is the ace grade 3 for Liberators. The idea was to set up your Gancelot play, get all your stuff out in the field, then break right to Gancelot, give everything an extra 5k boost, give 3 units an extra 5k boost, let alone also having Alfred gain his own 2k boost per rearguard limit break skill. Alfred was pretty cool. I mean, I really liked him. I remember trying to get this card while it was during sneak preview, actually. And oh my god, it was frustrating. I mean, I was able to get a few of them, I think $10 at the time. But they eventually went up to 20 because this actually became a winning deck. Believe it or not, this was a winning deck at one point. You played for Alfred, for Gancelot, you set it up, you didn't run Blaster Blade, or you only ran the one like Aichi, and you did pretty well. But Alfred himself is, again, unique. With his limit break skill being, he gains 2,000 for each rearguard with Liberator in the card name. That's interesting, because it's very reminiscent of his original King of Knights continuous skill. Alfred also had an act effect of counterblast 2 Liberator cards. Lift the top card of the deck, search for one Dual Paladin among them, call to open rearguard, and put the rest at the bottom of the deck. That sounds kind of familiar, don't you think? Nonetheless, this was an interesting card because you were able to do it multiple times. Yes, it was a counterblast of 2, but if you were for sure going to finish your opponent off that turn, you did it. You did it twice. Or you did a weird combo where you can do it 3 times, and you were set. Next, as an honorable mention, I want to talk about some Dual Paladin cards from Season 2 that actually came back and became Liberators. I want to talk about Halo Liberator Mark for just a quick moment. I love this card's art. It is my favorite of all Dual Paladin perfect cards. Although he is just a vanilla, well, I can't say vanilla, a basic perfect card, this card's art is so amazing. And the hexagon, thing was actually used all throughout Season 3. I think it's still used today. Or different designs, but I mean, at Season 3 point, when they perfect card, it was a hexagon, and I thought that was really cool. And the flavor text of this card is just, I love it. I need to pick up another set of these when I get the chance. Next, I want to go on to some more Liberator support, actual support. Liberator of the Flute, Estrad. Now, when Estrad was released, it was known, everyone was losing it. Like, this card was so much better than Player of the Holy Bow, Vivian, because it didn't need to be boosted. The one downside of this card was it had to counterblast a Liberator card. So you kind of had to run a lot of Liberator cards just to get the benefit of this. Other than that, it's still the same. Search for the top card, call it to open rear, or put it to the bottom. Estrad was still really useful throughout. I believe he was used all the way till booster BT15. So he has Estrad had a lot of longevity within Liberators. Next, we have Fast Chase Liberator, Josephus. Josephus was a unique card. It is a unique card. I don't care who you are, this is still a unique card. When he's stalled from the deck, you Soul Blast one card with Liberator in the card name. If you have a Liberator Vanguard, you draw a card. So this card kind of had a double cost. It was Liberator specific, and you had to have a Liberator Vanguard. But in a Liberator deck, who cares? What makes this card unique is it's a 7k power. In the past, we've had Listener of the Truth Dendrain that had a very similar skill, except it was just Soul Blast 1. If you have a Dual Paladin Vanguard, draw a card. So Josephus within Liberators was a key card. I remember when these were like 2 or 3 each. I think they were at 5 at one point. I'm glad I had mine early, and I'm glad I still have mine, because if I ever decide to play Liberators outside of what we're going to talk about in the next video, I'd still use it, like maybe 2 or 3, depending on the deck. But Josephus was a good, solid draw on-call card. And then finally, we have our starter, our actual starter, Wingle Liberator. Now, Wingle was kind of... Wingle is special, not just because it's Wingle, but how we got Wingle was different. When the Liberator trial deck and the Eradicator trial deck came out, for some reason Bushiroad thought it'd be a smart idea. Instead of releasing set 10 and continuing with the pattern, we were already caught up to set 9. So if they had released set 10 when they should have, we'd only be a set behind. But they thought, oh, no, we're going to release set BT11 before BT10, which made no sense. And releasing it right before California Regionals, oh, I don't understand their logic. But whatever, this was Bushiroad logic back then. We're caught up now. It's all good. So how we got this card originally was a participation promo card for the sneak preview for set 11. But nonetheless, Wingle. So when an attack hits a Vanguard that this unit boosted a Liberator card, you can grab a Blaster Blade Liberator from the Soul and call it to an open rearguard. This card was handy if you were using Blaster Blade, but a majority of the players back then, I think they either ran it at 1 or they didn't run it at all. I think the lineup back then was, I think it was 4 Strad, 4 Fallon, 3 Galatine, because Cynthia Vanillas were still prominent back then. To each their own. So Wingle kind of wasn't really the decent starter to go with. A lot of people used Spring Priest Messenger from the Lost video. And it worked. It worked with this sort of deck because you need something that can call from the deck. Instead of being specific only to one unit, you need to be able to call stuff to set up your break ride skills, to set up your columns. But alas, Liberators weren't the only thing that got support in set 10. We also got a lot of generic support. In the form, I found 2 cards. I found Knight of Far Arrow Sapphire, however you want to pronounce it, go for it. So when this card's placed on rearguard from the deck, if you have a Gold Paladin Vanguard, choose a card in your damage and turn it face up, and Soul Charge 1. This was the original Counter Charge 1, Soul Charge 1 card. This card was really cool. It actually became even better later on in G era. Before set GBT 7. But this card was still really decent. I don't think Liberators used it at all because it wasn't Liberator. I don't even think anybody bothered with it, but it came better later. And then we have Holy Squire, whose name I cannot pronounce. This was kind of a throwback starter. This type of starter Forerunner was very generic amongst every clan, except Gear Chronicle. So where, if it boosted a unit with a limit break, you could put it into the soul and draw a card, if the attack hit. I actually remember using this guy in my Ezel deck, kind of somewhat after 2013, before BT14 came out. It was interesting. It was unique. It was a +1 on hit. Why not? Next, we have the next booster set that Liberators got support in, BT12, Binding Force of the Black Rings. Now, this set did have a lot of support for Liberators, but there's only 4 that actually stand out. I mean, I guess there is an honorable mention, but I'll save that till after I'm done talking about these other ones. So with Set 12 coming out. Set 12 released not just support for Liberators, but also for Shadow Paladins Revengers. We were introduced to the clan Link Joker, who we found out were the original cause of Season 2 to happen, along with a few other things. So why Set 12 is actually really special for Gold Paladin is because it introduced the concept of mass calling, something Gold Paladins, the Liberators in general, actually needed. So let's go ahead and jump right into the main grade 3, Wolfbane Liberator Garmor. Garmor, I'm going to say unique a lot throughout this series, but Garmor was a very unique card. With his Limit Break 4 act skill, counterblast 3 cards with Liberator in the card name. You look at the top card of the deck, search for 1 Gold Paladin among them, and call it to open rearguard, and put the rest to the bottom in any order. Then, if you called a unit and you still have an open rearguard circle, you can continue this skill without paying the cost. So if you had an empty field and you rode onto this guy and you're at Limit Break, guess what? I'm going to counterblast 3, and I'm just going to call out the top 5 cards. 1 at a time, of course. His auto skill was very interesting, something that we don't really see in Gold Paladins at all, actually returning stuff to the bottom of the deck. So his auto skill is when he attacks, if you have, you can pay the cost of putting something, a Liberator back to the bottom of the deck. If you do, he gains 4,000 power until the end of that battle. So he becomes 15 by himself, or 25 if you did a break ride. Still pushing for good numbers. But with all that superior calling, there had to have been more, and there was, in the form of these 2 cards. Overcast Liberator Gerent and Mayrain Liberator Bruno. Both of these cards have a copy-paste skill. They are both identical, but one was preferred over the other. I'm willing to bet you guys know which one was preferred. That's right, Bruno. Bruno was the preferred card of the 2 to be used in future builds and future decks. So what these 2 specific cards did was, if you have a Gold Paladin Vanguard, or a Liberator Vanguard I should say, if you have a Liberator Vanguard, when another Gold Paladin unit is placed on rearguard from the deck, this gains 3,000 power until the end of the turn. So let's say you called your Garmor out, and you put this card behind it, and then you used Garmor's Limit Break skill. Guess what? You just gained 12,000 power on top of his 7, plus 19 with Garmor's 11. That's 30, plus his 4, 34,000 to the Vanguard. That's quite a bit of power. That is quite a bit of power. Bruno really did stand the test of time. I think he still does, depending on the Liberator deck. But again, we'll go into that in a future video. So with all the superior calling and all this power gaining, there had to be more, right? Well, you're right. We got a new starter, Liberator Cheer Up Trumpeter. This card actually helped this concept of mass calling, or calling and power up. Put this card in the soul. Choose your Vanguard with Liberator in the card name. Until the end of the turn, that unit gets, when your Gold Paladin is placed on rearguard from the deck, this card gains 3,000 power until the end of the turn. So if you started with this card, used it on Garmor, called Bruno behind your Garmor, you're just gaining more and more power. This card was so cool for its time. And it actually has shown potential even nowadays with, again, stuff that I'll talk about in a future video. But this card was very unique. And then the honorable mention for this one is Barkle Liberator. So Blaster Blade Liberator got 1 support card. Cool. But it didn't really help. All it did was, if it boosted Blaster Blade Liberator and Blaster Blade hit, you can check the top 3 cards and call 1 to rest in an open rearguard circle. And I believe it was also Liberator specific too. It really, really didn't help. I mean, with the lack of Blaster Blade support so early on, it's like, how would you even be able to use Blaster Blade? Then we move on to set 14, where people were like, you know, I'm not even going to bother using Blaster Blade, because we have a whole new other sort of playstyle as well. Set 14, Brilliant Strike, introduced the concept to Dual Paladin of Cross Break Ride. It's a cross ride and a break ride. This set also introduced the card concept of Quintet Wall. It was the very first set that did it. I thought it was going to be amazing because of what's going to happen in a future video, the next one actually. And I thought, oh, this card's so cool, it'll set up for it. God, was I wrong. God, was I wrong. But anyways, this set was actually very unique. This one's actually very special to me personally because of what was supported. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the Liberator support that came out, and then I'm going to talk about the Ezel support that came out, and then the two good generic cards that came from the set. So first, we've got the Cross Break Ride for Gancelot. Liberator of Bonds, Gancelot Zenith. This card's art is so badass. Oh god, it's so cool. I just wish his skill was just slightly better. But what this card does, at Limit Break 4, you counterblast one card with Liberator in the card name, and choose one of your rear guards, grade 2 or less, and put it to the bottom of the deck. When this unit attacks, you may pay the cost. If you do, look at the top card of your deck, search for one Dual Paladin among them, call it to open rear guard, put the rest to the bottom in any order, and that unit gains 10,000 power until the end of the turn. So now it was very possible for Liberators to do essentially multi-attack. Not just, you know, the standard 3, you actually could break out and do 4, possibly 5 if you ran stand triggers, but in most cases it was just 4. And whatever you called, even if it was a trigger, it still gained 10k power, which means the opponent still had to block with a 5k shield or more, depending on how you attacked. This card has the standard cross ride skill of, if you have a card with Solitary Liberator Gancelot in the soul, it gains plus 2,000 permanently. And we also have Lord skill, which prevented, you know, clan mixing. Who needs it? Next we have our Quintet Wall, Sword Formation Liberator Ingrain. This card is considered a Sentinel, so you're only able to run up to 4 cards with Sentinel in a deck. So a lot of people at the time were like, okay, do I use 4 marks, or do I use like 1 of her, 2 of her? How do I picked up like 5 of her when this came out. I went out and I was like, let me have that. Let me get that off of you. It's going to be really good. Again, I was mistaken horribly. But nonetheless, this card was very unique when it was released. Counterblast 1. When this card's placed on guard circle from hand, if you have a Dual Paladin Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck. Call all the Dual Paladins to guard circle at rest among them, and then put the rest into the drop zone. So pretty much you're blocking with 5 extra cards. Considering this card has a 0 shield, it just made it to where, hey, possibility of more cards that you can guard on top of it. At the time, it was kind of unique. If you didn't want to discard a card, you could just counterblast. Because counterblasting, we don't need to. We can counterblast all we want with no repercussions, right? Wrong. Next, we actually have some Gancelot support in the form of Flying Sword Liberator Dolores. I probably butchered that. But his skill activate is an act skill. Choose a grade 3 with Gancelot in its card name in your drop zone and put it to the bottom of the deck. If you have a Dual Paladin Vanguard, choose one of your grade 3 units with Gancelot in its card name, and that unit gains 5,000 power until the end of the turn. What's very funny about this card is Regalia also got the same kind of card, except the word was Regalia, thus making that particular card a really good staple in Genesis, which Genesis was supported in the set, but I'm not talking about Genesis. I'm talking about Golds. This card was really cool, especially for the Gancelot deck. For what it was very cool, and it was very handy. if you wanted to try to re-ride your break rides or cross break ride, awesome. Natural Liberator. This particular heal trigger may look like it's just a heal trigger, but in a future video I'm going to talk about how this card is very, very special. This card is used for a particular type of deck, but again, no spoilers, or you guys already figured it out. It was used with something else that involved high beasts. Now, on to the general, quote-unquote general, quote-unquote Ezel support that came out in the new form of a Grade 3 Salvation Line Grand Ezel Scissors. Before I even talk about this card, I went to the preview for this, and I opened one. I pulled one, and I was so excited. Like, I was like, I want to get it. I need to get it. I've got the money. I'm gonna get it. And I pulled it in my pack, and it was so great. It was such a cool feel to actually get the card you wanted. This particular Grade 3, this particular Ezel is actually very, very special, because this one has a very unique skill to go against another clan. So at Limit Break, it's an act effect, Counterblast 2, Soul Blast 2. Unlock all of your locked cards. If the number of Gold Paladin rearguards you have is 5, until the end of the turn, this card gains 10,000 power and critical +1 until the end of the turn. Then, Soul Charge 1 and choose a card from your damage and turn it face up. So essentially the cost of being Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1. To unlock everything you have, assuming you had a full field, gaining extra 10k power and critical really pushed the opponent. This particular Ezel did retain the original Blonde Ezel's continuous skill of during your turn, this unit gains 1,000 power for each Gold Paladin rearguard. So just by himself, assuming you had a full field, this card was already swinging for 26,000 critical +1. So great. It's so cool. I love this card. I'm a little biased on it. I know. I'm sorry. I'm gonna try not to be. But this card was so cool because it would counter Lean Joker. Everyone was complaining about Lean Joker at the time. People, Gold Paladin players specifically, were actually using this card, I think, at 1 or 2 as a final turn push to counter Lean Joker. Next, we actually have some Ezel support. Burning Scale Knight Elliewood, with an auto skill of Counterblast 1. When your Grade 3 Ezel and its card name is placed on the Vanguard circle, you may pay the cost. If you do, loot the top card of your deck. Search for one card among them and call it to an open rear, and then put the rest of the bottom in any order. So, this card was essentially originally Blonde Ezel's skill of top calling minus the power. Actually, this card was very reminiscent of a lot of other cards in the past, but it was more activated on timing of ride. This is a very different card. And this card was to set up for when you ride to Ezel. So this card set up to where, if you called this out on your Grade 2 turn, you would call it in the back row, because you wouldn't want your opponent to attack it, and it would be way too soon for them to lock it. So it'd be safe in the back row, wherever, until you rode to your Ezel Grade 3. Then you're able to call out something else. So it made sense that Ezel specifically got an on-call support, because we need to fill up the field in order to do the limit break effectively. Much like Bad Demagus, Ezel also received a Grade 1 10k attacker, Knight of Passion Tori, however you want to pronounce it, a Grade 1 10k attacker for Ezel. When this unit attacks, if you have a Vanguard with Ezel in the card name, this card gains 3,000 power until the end of that battle. So this card was really cool, but it didn't help until you were at Grade 3. I mean, later on, this card did come in handy for future decks, but for the time being, if you didn't have a Bad Demagus and you needed to hit for 10, you'd hit rear guards with this card. Next, we have Sacred Twin Beast White Lion. with an auto skill of Counterblast 1. When this card is placed on rearguard, if you have a Vanguard with Ezel in its card name, you may pay the cost. If you do, Soul Charge 1, put the top card of your deck into your damage zone, and at the end of the turn, choose a card from your damage zone and return it to your deck and shuffle. Now, in the last video, I didn't talk about the self-damagers because every clan essentially got one. But this one in particular was very unique because it was specific towards a grade 3. Not only did this card give you a +1 soul, but it also let you recycle some of your damage too. So if you got like a heal trigger in your first damage, that kind of sucks. But with this card, you're able to kind of recover it. You're able to, you use it for counterblast, soul charge 1. At the end of the turn, hey, you put that card back into the deck. I really liked this card, and it was meant to support Grand Ezel and his Limit Break. And then finally, Ezel even got his own unique starter, Scarlet Lion Cub Karia. Karia. Again, to each their own. So, the basic Forerunner skill, and then another auto skill. When an attack hits a Vanguard during the battle, this unit boosted a Vanguard with Ezel in its card name. You may pay the cost of putting into the soul. If you do, load the top 2 cards of your deck, search for up to 2 cards among them, call them to open rearguard at rest, and put the rest of the bottom in any order. Whoa, hold on here. You're telling me that Ezel got a card that if it hits, goes in the soul, check the top 2, and I can call up to 2? Whoa! That, at the time, that was amazing. Even if there were, like, if you pulled up one decent unit and a trigger, it's like, hey, I have the choice, so I can call one, put one back. Or it's like, oh, hey, I got 2 awesome units. I can call them at rest and gain more advantage off of it. This was so cool. I used this card. I think I used her at 2 at the time. Actually, later on, I used her at 2 because it's like, hey, she would always pop up right as I do the first one still. So it's like, okay, hey, guess what? Next turn, I'm going to do it again. Now we have our actual generic support from this set. Knife Throwing Knight Melligant. This card skill was Soul Blast 2. When this card is placed on rearguard, if you have a Gold Paladin Vanguard. If you do, choose up to 2 cards from your damage zone and turn them face up. So, Soul Blast 2, Countercharge 2. Very easy, very basic. This became a staple in a lot of Gold Paladin decks right here at this particular moment in time, even into the future up until recently. This card was great. A lot of people used it at 2, sometimes even at 3, just because it's like, I want to make sure I can countercharge. This helped not just the Ezel cross ride, it also helped with Liberators that had excessive soul. This didn't really help Grand Ezel too much because it was still soul, but even for setup, it was decent because you'd still only have to use the skill 1 time. If you used it twice, hey, good for you, but there were a lot of cards in golds that still go into soul, like Flame of Victory, Rune Bow, various starters, stuff like that. Now finally, we are at the climax of Season 3. With the release of Infinite Rebirth, we were introduced to a monster. We were introduced to a grade 3 Link Joker unit called Starvader Omega Glendios, whose skill was very unique, that you could call reverse units, lock cards, and then if your opponent had 5 locked cards, you automatically win the game. World end. But thankfully, we had Ezel still, who was able to do as much as they could, but nonetheless could not surpass World's End. thus having Liberators come in and save the day. This came in the form of a new Alfred Grade 3, Liberator, Monarch Sanctuary, Alfred. This card was the much needed support for the Blaster Blade Liberator type of build. This card had not just a Limit Break 4, but a Limit Break 5 to counter that of Omega Glendios. So I'm going to read his Act Skill first, and then I'll go into his Ultimate Break. So, his Act Skill, Limit Break 4, Counter Blast 3, and Soul Blast 2. Put all of your rear guards and the lock cards to the top of your deck in any order. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, search for up to 5 cards with Liberator and its card name among them, and call them to separate rear guards, and put the rest in the bottom in any order. This ability cannot be used for the rest of that turn. So in layman's terms, it's a once per turn skill. In combination with that skill, if you're at Limit Break 5, when your Blaster Blade Liberator is placed on rear guard from the deck, this card gains 10,000 power and critical +1 until the end of the turn. We also have a really interesting continuing skill that's very reminiscent of Gold Paladins. During your turn, this card gains 1,000 power for each of your rear guards. A very, very familiar skill for Gold Paladin bosses. This card, I cannot stress enough how powerful this card actually was when it was released. This card was another answer to Link Joker if Grand Ezel failed. This also gave Liberator players a way of like, okay, I don't have to use Grand Ezel, I can just use Alfred. And I actually can use all the Blaster Blade stuff that I still had, because Gancelot didn't even use Blaster Blade. But Alfred did. So, Infinite Rebirth had not just this amazing Grade 3, but also introduced a lot of other Blaster Blade Liberator support. Liberator, Star Rain Trumpeter, with her skill of choose a card with Blaster Blade Liberator from your soul or drop zone and put it to the top of the deck. When this card is placed on Vanguard, if you have a Gold Paladin Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, shuffle your deck. Then look at the top card of your deck, search for one Gold Paladin among them, and call it to open rear, and put the rest of the bottom in any order. So pretty much, this card was, oh, you killed all my Blaster Blade, or I Soul Blasted it? Okay, cool. I'm going to call Trumpeter, put it back, and I'm going to get a free call. This card was so cool. It just set up for all the Monarch plays. It was just, or extra free calls, in combinations with Bruno and Cheer Up Trumpeter. Oh god, Monarch Alfred with Cheer Up Trumpeter was amazing. It's like, oh hey, plus 15. It's 26 at base. Oh hey, I told Blaster Blades, even more power. We're also introduced to actual basic support for Blaster Blade Liberator. We have cards like Red Rainbow Liberator, Bolin. Bolin. Again, to each their own. When your Blaster Blade Liberator is placed on rear guard, if you have a Liberator Vanguard, this card gains 5,000 power until the end of the turn. So he becomes a 14k beatstick, which isn't too bad, but I don't think he was really used that much in Liberators. I think maybe for trying it out it was alright, but there were other cards that you could use. But move on over with your grade 1s, we have White Rainbow Liberator, Balan. This card changed Liberators, specifically Blaster Blade Liberator decks, forever. As long as Blaster Blade Liberator is placed on rear guard, you can countercharge 1. So if you did the combo correctly where you were like calling out 2 Blaster Blades and you have like 2 of these guys, guess what? He gets to activate for each of the Blaster Blades twice. That means you get to countercharge 4 cards for just calling 2 Blaster Blades from the deck. Oh my god, this made the Alfred deck so consistent. So I'm gonna finish you now, and if I don't, I'm gonna do it again next turn. Finally, we come to the starter for this new Blaster Blade Liberator deck support, Yearning Liberator Aram. if you have a grade 3 or greater Gold Paladin Vanguard, search your deck for up to one card named Blaster Blade Liberator, reveal it to your opponent, shuffle your deck, and then put it on top of your deck. So this card's set up for your Monarch Limit Break, Ultimate Break, ending turn, because you were guaranteed a Blaster Blade at the top of the deck. Although with Monarch still you had to be careful with it, because if you returned 5, you wouldn't be able to call that extra Blaster Blade out. So you would always have to try to manage, okay, if I have 4 on the 4 rear guards and use this card to put Blaster Blade on top, okay, that means I'll be able to call out 2 Blaster Blades with the skill and be able to decimate the opponent with critical +2, ultimately ending with 3. So cool. So cool. This card was really great for that particular version. And just when you thought this was all about Blaster Blade, no, it isn't. I mean, mainly yes. But we also got Gancelot support as well. This card in particular, Sharp Point Liberator Gold Lancer. This card and the Revenger version was the very first incarnation of the Grade 1, Grade 3 Searcher that we know today as the Stride Fodders, like Steam Breath Dragon and Dawning Knight Gorbadoc and all those Tommy Bros. This card was choose a Grade 3 Gold Paladin from your hand and discard it. When this card is placed on rear guard, if you have a Gold Paladin Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for one Solitary Liberator Gancelot, reveal it to your opponent, and put it in your hand. Okay, so it's slightly different, but even still, it made it to where you can correct your Break Ride so you can actually cross Break Ride correctly. And it also gave more setup for the other Grade 1 guy, the Flying Sword guy, Liberator, whose name I butchered a little while ago. Then we have one of the most unique Liberator Grade 1s to ever come out, and this card worked so well with a card coming out in the future video and with Bruno. Physical Force Liberator Zoran. Now you might be wondering why it's the sample picture. The actual card itself was misprinted. So if you see the last rear guard circle right there in its text where it says call it to rear, it actually was messed up for some reason. It was a misprint. So for this video, I'm using the correct sample version. So this card's skill was when this card's placed on rear guard from the deck, if you have a Gold Paladin Vanguard, you may pay the cost of putting it into the soul. If you do, loot the top 3 cards of your deck, search for one card with Liberator in the card name, call it to rear guard, and put the rest at the bottom of the deck in any order. So this card could be used in combo with Alfred, Gancelot, pretty much anything that was able to superior call, and gave an extra superior call on top of it, powering up Bruno even further. This card, I believe, became a 4 of in a future deck that we'll talk about next time. Then, as an honorable mention, this particular card, Starry Skies Liberator Guinevere. Guinevere was kind of a tech card. It was a tech choice, because it still didn't really activate a rear guard. It activated on guard. So when this card's placed on guard circle, if you have a Liberator Vanguard, you may pay the cost of a simple Counterblast 1. If you do, this card gains 5,000 shield for each Gold Paladin rear guard until the end of that battle. So that card really reminds me of the new Ezel G-Guardian. I wonder where they got it from. But this card was a tech card in most Alfred builds because there was so much countercharging with White Rainbow Liberator Bolin. You could afford to use the Counterblast to actually gain extra guard instead of discarding for a perfect guard. Last but not least in the honorable mentions, Another grade 3 that kind of didn't get enough support, but this card actually became a fan favorite for what it did. And I'm talking about Liberator, Holy Shine Dragon. This particular badass looking grade 3 with a Liberate skill of at the end of the turn, choose a grade 3 gold paladin from your soul and write it. If you rode, choose a card named Liberator Holy Shine Dragon from your soul and add it to your hand. What this Liberate skill did was you can ride, let's say for example you have Gancelot already set as your vanguard and you break ride. What this card did was at the end of that turn, you basically took Holy Shine Dragon back from Vanguard, put it back in your hand, and you reset Gancelot as your current Vanguard. So this way, every turn, you could break ride every turn and add pressure to 3 rear guards, 3 rear guard attacks. Now with an auto skill of counterblasting 1 Liberator. When this card's placed on Vanguard Circle, you may pay the cost. If you do, loot the top card of your deck, search for 1 card among it, call it to open rear, put the rest of the bottom in any order. A very generic skill, but what made this card unique is the fact that you could infinitely break ride every turn until the end of the game, whether win or lose. You always had that grade 3 in hand to break ride. So that'll do it with this video. Everything from Trial Deck 8, Liberator to the Sanctuary, all the way to Infinite Rebirth of Booster 15. This season is regarded as like one of the best seasons. At least in my opinion. I actually preferred season 2. But this season was it was action-packed. It had twists. It was great. It was amazing, and it set up for more things in the future. A lot of people will argue about this season, but I believe it is one of the best. One of the top seasons of the original series. When Booster 15 was released, Monarch Alfred became the main Liberator deck. True, there was still Gancelot, Zenith on the side, but Monarch Alfred also used Zenith as a backup grade 3. A lot of other decks also used Holy Shine Dragon. But, I mean, you could play around with those particular 3 grade 3s and make a really decent deck with it. I believe the Monarch Alfred deck right now is budget friendly. Unless you strides. But I don't think you need to worry about it. Monarch Alfred himself is still such a cool card. Liberators were a lot of fun, and they still are a lot of fun. They're still a little restrictive, but thankfully in the future they got decent general support that can be used in any Gold Paladin deck. So, if you guys like this video, make sure you leave a comment below, give this video a like, and why not consider subscribing for a future episode. Let me know, what was your favorite card of Season 3 of Cardfight Vanguard? What was your favorite card? What was your favorite moment? Let me know in the comments below. And with that, I will catch you guys in the next episode of The History of Gold Paladins. Have yourself a great day, and remember, stay humble.